Aloha, everyone, and welcome to our Halloween Spooktacular SCEP Live Online. This is the, I believe, third year we have done this in various venues. Last year we were at Manoa Public Library. So we're excited to be here on campus with you this time. And we have three fabulous tellers for you. But first I want to say thank you to the National Endowment for the Arts and the Hawaii State Foundation on Culture and the Arts for helping to make this happen. We are streaming as well, so I want to welcome everyone out there in virtual world to that includes the ghosts that are there with you, then the others that are in the room here with us. We are hoping you enjoy all of them and everyone has a wonderfully spooky time. My name is Tim Slaughter. I'm with the University of Hawaii at Mānoa Outreach College, and I want to welcome all of you here. And without further ado, we want to get the show on the road. So let's welcome to the stage Janine Oshiro, a poet in her own right, award-winning poet who we're turning into a storyteller extraordinaire. Janine Oshiro.
Knock, knock. Who's there? That was pretty good, but I think we can maybe do a little bit better. Knock, knock. Who's there? That was great. Thank you. But I don't have a knock, knock joke for you today. It's Halloween, almost Halloween. You're here for spooky stories. But first, the knock, knock joke. It's probably the first joke you learn when you're a kid. Are doors funny? I mean, they are kind of funny when they're not scary. Because who knows what could be hiding behind that door? You know, all over the world, you hear stories of places that are doors, openings, portals that lead to other worlds, to spirit worlds. Sometimes these doors are marked by something in the landscape, like a particular rock formation, a cave, a spring, or a river. Sometimes these places are not marked by anything that can be seen at all, just felt. And you may not know that just by your presence, you are. People say that in Kyoto, Japan, you can find one of these places, one of these doorways, at the top of a hill that leads down to the underworld. And very close to this threshold, between the living and the dead, you can find a candy shop. Now this candy shop, from morning till night, bustles with the energy of children's voices and the clatter of small coins. People from all over the city love the candies sold there. But to the shopkeeper's daughter, Kyo, the sweets are nothing special. One day, her father told her that she was old enough to watch the shop alone while he went out of town on business for a week. He said, "Open the shop at 8 a.m. and close the shop at 8 p.m. exactly." By the way, this is a folk tale. Child labor laws don't apply. Kyo was an obedient girl. She didn't wonder, was she indeed old enough? She simply nodded her head in agreement. The next day, her father left before dawn, and Kyo opened the shop at 8 a.m. exactly. All day, she wrapped up sweets and counted out change while listening to the not-so-sweet sound of children pleading and making so many promises. "Mommy, Mommy, please! But I'll clean Grandma's yard, and Great-Grandma's yard, and Great-Great-Grandma's yard." Kyo was not an adult. She was not a child. Still, she thought to herself, I was never like them. As she locked the door at 8 p.m., exactly as instructed. Keo was tired after a long day. The only thing she had left to do was to wipe up the sticky fingerprints on the jars and the counters when she heard, If Keo ignored the knocking at the door, she would be following her father's directions exactly. And Keo was a good girl, wasn't she? Well, she was definitely tired. So she kept on with her cleaning. Keo knew it wasn't what she was supposed to do. It wasn't what her father said to do. But she unlocked and opened the door. And there in the doorway stood a young woman with a pale face and worry in her dark eyes. She held out her hand with a 1 mon coin. Please, please, some sweets. Keo had a funny feeling inside. She wasn't sure what to do, but she'd already opened the door. So she wrapped up some millet candy, gave it to the woman, took her coin. Before Keo could even say thank you, the woman was gone. Keo did not have a good night's sleep. But the next day, she opened the shop on time for a full day of sweets and the not-so-sweet pleading and promise-making. And at the end of the night, well, Keo had already set a precedent. She unlocked and opened the door. Guess who? The woman held out her hand with a 1 mon coin. Please, please, some sweets. Keo still had a funny feeling inside, but she was curious. She was also a girl with a tender heart. She felt drawn to this woman with her pale face and the worry in her dark eyes. She wrapped up more millet candy than she should. Don't tell her father. She gave it to the woman and took her coin. She looked down, trying to think of one more thing to say. But when she looked up, the woman was gone. Keo ran out into the street, but there was only the moon and the cold, cold coin in her hand. 4 more days and nights passed in this manner. 4 days of sweets, pleading and promise-making, and 4 nights of When Keo answered the door on the 7th night, the woman looked so frail. She seemed almost nothing but a shimmer of light. She held out her hand, but it was empty. Please, please, some sweets. The woman took off her coat and offered it to Keo. What could Keo do? All week she felt like she was sleepwalking through her days and living vivid dreams of this woman's face. Well, she wrapped up a big bundle of millet candy and took the coat, and the woman vanished. The next day, Keo's father returned. Keo was free. She had the day to herself. It was a cool morning. She decided to go for a walk. She didn't know if she should do it, but she wore the woman's coat. The sleeves, they were a little bit long, but otherwise fit her just fine. She hadn't told her father about what happened. She didn't understand it herself. And as she walked, she kept thinking about that woman, those eyes. She wasn't paying attention to where she was going. She turned down a busy street. Someone grabbed her arm, pulled her into a quiet doorway. A man stood there staring at her. "This coat! Where did you get this coat?" Kyo explained. She tried to explain. "This woman came knocking every night. One morning, oh, these eyes." The man stopped her. He said, "My daughter, she died, and I buried her in this very coat 1 week ago with 6 1-mon coins, to pay the way to the afterlife." Kyo and the man rushed to the cemetery. As they approached his daughter's grave, they heard crying. The man threw himself on the grave and started digging up handfuls of dirt. And as he dug, the cries got louder. Kyo got down on her hands and knees to help him. And what they found in the dirt was life. A baby was crying in the dead woman's arms. The baby's mouth was sticky with millet candy, and wrappers littered the dirt like fallen leaves. The man said, "I thought the baby had died with her in her womb." Kyo knew just what to do. She picked up the baby and promised every sweetness she could. A mother's work is never done, but Kyo said to the woman, "You have done enough." The baby had entered the world, and now the door was closing. The woman's chin fell forward in agreement. People say that you can still visit this candy shop in Kyoto, and it dates back to 1599. And there are many stories of revered monks who are said to be that baby who survived on sweets from his mother's ghost. Here's another story about a mother's love and a different doorway. I grew up in Mililani, but this story is set in Portland, Oregon, where I lived for many years in my 20s. My mother died when I was quite young, and so my grandma played a really big role in my life. When I moved to Portland, my grandma was always worried about me. She wanted to make sure, most of all, that I was safe. When we talked on the phone, she would say, "Never go out at night." And, "Are you eating? Are your feet cold?" Did I tell my grandma about the time I was walking home late at night after a concert and I was hit by a car? No. Did I tell her about the insurance money that allowed me to buy a zippy blue bicycle that took me to karaoke bars all over town? Of course not. As far as Grandma was concerned, I was at home every night, keeping warm, eating well, wearing socks. And so it was on one of these nights when I was safe and snug in my bed asleep, when I woke up to the sound of a zipper in the wall above my head. Something was unzipping a door in the wall. It was a square door. I could hear how the zipper got higher as it rounded the corners. I tried to move. I wanted desperately to move, but my body refused. I could feel something now climbing out of the wall, now lowering itself onto my head, now on my head, now cold feet running down my body, now hot down at my toes and back up and down and up again. And then it sat, this thing, this dark shape on my chest. It was squat, almost reptilian, with little feet that pinned my body in place. I opened my mouth, no sound. I pushed up and up against this thing, this weight on my chest. I wanted it off. But the more I pushed, the more it pressed me down. And then I gave up. It wasn't a choice, it just happened. I felt my body sink down into the bed. I was falling deeper and deeper into the dark. And somewhere inside of me, I called out for my mother, please. And a beam of white light shot up out of my chest. And she was there. And I could move again. That wasn't the only time my mother saved me from what some people call the sleeping ghost or the choking ghost. You can find stories of the sleeping ghost all over the world. The English poet Gerard Manley Hopkins probably experienced the sleeping ghost. He wrote in his journal in 1873, "The feeling is terrible. The body seems to fall in and hang like a dead weight on the chest. I cried on the holy name. It made me think that this is what the souls in hell would feel like imprisoned in their bodies." The Japanese call the sleeping ghost kanashibari, literally bound with metal. And the more scientifically inclined among us call it sleep paralysis. According to studies, 1 in 5 people may suffer from this condition. Did I tell my grandma about my nighttime horror, about this thing that crawled out of the door I didn't even know was there? No. But maybe if I had, she would have said, "Stay out all night, have fun. Staying home in bed, it's just too scary." Thank you.
Thank you, Janine, for that wonderful start to this afternoon's program. And now we'd like to bring up to the stage Alton Chung. Alton is a storyteller who works around the world and has been to the National Storytelling Festival in Jonesboro and makes his home both here and in Portland, Oregon. Alton Chung.
Thank you. The events of this story occurred in August of 2017. 6 young Hawaiian men, 2 of whom were brothers, hiked up into the Ko'olau Mountains and encountered something out of myth and legend. They told their story to a spiritual healer whom we shall call Mrs. Umaku, and she recorded their interview on a digital recorder. These 6 young men, they were very fit. They loved to go hiking off trail in the mountains of Oahu. Closer than brothers, they were lifeguards and former lifeguards. And according to Mrs. Umaku, part billy goat. Because no one else could walk along these narrow ridges that these men like to hike. They met at the Waimanu Home Road trailhead. And they pulied, they prayed. And at 7:30 in the morning, they headed out. They packed 20 pounds of water, about 2 gallons per person, along with food and gear and tents. their packs weighed between 40 and 50 pounds. Like I said, real fit young men. They started out, they were all excited. They were using their phones for GPS and navigating their way and taking pictures. The 10-hour hike up into the mountains was exhausting, but there was very little wind. They were going to camp at a place that they called the Meadow, up in the Ko'olau Mountains. There was this one guy, he was just having a hard time. On the hike up, his pack ripped, and one of his shoes began falling apart. And by the time they got to the Meadow, he was complaining that his ear hurt and his knees ached. It was as if everything was telling this guy, just turn around and go home. It was about 4 p.m. when they reached the Meadow. It was they could see a little stream running through it. I mean, this was a boggy marshland. I mean, and there was no wind. They were way up above the clouds, and so everything was misty and still and surreal. When that first guy crossed that stream, it began to drizzle. 30 seconds after the last guy crossed over that stream, they all heard the amakihi calling. Amakihi is the Hawaiian honey creeper. This call was sort of like a high-pitched chi-chi-chi-chi-chi-chi. One of the brothers, there are two brothers in this group, he looked at the others and said, "Hey, it's calling someone." The notion is that when you're up in the mountains and you hear the amaki'i, it's a warning to be careful, to beware. That drizzle turned to rain, and the wind began to pick up. And in a while, that rain turned into a downpour. And they haven't even set up their tents. I mean, there were rivulets of water everywhere and mushy places. It was 6 o'clock in the evening before they finally found a place. They set up camp. And by then, they were soaked. They camped on the highest piece of ground which they could find, which was a slope right next to a sheer cliff. They slept sliding downhill all night long. And they felt uneasy and a little spooked as they kind of settled in for the night. I mean, the wind just kept getting stronger and stronger. And soon it was howling through their camp. And that's when they got a little scared. They looked at this as kind of an omen, a harbinger of doom. They knew that they did not belong there, and they had better leave as soon as possible. The wind just kept getting stronger and stronger as darkness closed in around them. The radar apps on their phone were telling them that the storm was coming straight at them. They began to get texts from their friends saying, "Be good up there." One guy called his friend and said, "Hey, stay windy down there." "Huh? What?" "No. Why?" Nothing. But something weird was going on. They all felt it. It was as if they were like entering into a nightmare from which they knew they could not wake up. One guy brought fish and poi to eat. Another guy brought salmon and sweet potatoes. The guy who was having all the problems, he brought smoked pork. And he set up his tent a little bit away from everyone else. And in the middle of the night, in the middle of that big rainstorm, his tent leaked. And he was also one of the ones who heard the voices. The wind just whipped through their camp, and everyone just kind of hunkered down in their tents. Some of the people couldn't go to sleep. Others just passed out. And those awake could hear their snores over the wind. I mean, can you imagine? The wind is howling, and then they hear over the wind. I mean, must have been loud. These guys all woke up really early the next morning, and they talked about what each had experienced during the night. One guy said that when the wind calmed down, he could hear the amaki'i calling, singing. The last time he heard the bird was 11:30 at night. What bird sings in the middle of the night, especially in the middle of a storm? Another guy said he heard whispers outside of his tent. Others heard footsteps, voices, and they saw little hands pressing into the material of their tents. One guy said that, who had heard the footsteps, said that it started in the back of the camp and came right up to his tent. And he said, one set of footsteps was slow, deliberate, as whoever was making them was checking them out. One guy, he prayed to his aumakua, his spirit guardians and his ancestors to protect him. And he said that in the middle of the night, his aumakua came to him and told him in his head that, boy, it's okay. This will pass. He was up until 1 o'clock in the morning. He said when the wind came down, he could hear the amaki'i. He could hear the footsteps. And he also heard a woman speaking Hawaiian. And he asked, did anyone else hear the lady? Those who heard the lady said that she was chanting an oli in Hawaiian. An oli, a Hawaiian chant. And that sometimes she was having a conversation with whatever was running around their camp. Some guys said that they heard little footsteps inside of their tent, and then outside by someone else's tent, and then up on the ridge. Could this have been the Menehune, the fairy folk of the island? One guy said that when the wind calmed down, he could hear the amaki'i. He could hear the woman chanting an oli. And one set of footsteps walking away from the camp. They all realized that maybe they should have pule. They should have prayed when they got there to announce who they were and to ask permission to be there. Now they all puled. Now they all prayed, wishing for forgiveness, asking for forgiveness for whatever they had done wrong. As the sun rose, they could see the silhouette of the mountain highlighted against the dawn sky. The guy was having all the problems. He got his cell phone, he took a picture, and he looked at the picture and said, hey, from this angle, the mountain looks like the head of a pig. 5:30 in the morning, they decided they had enough time to go. So they're using their phones as GPS. They began hiking along these narrow ridges. I mean, the land just kind of fell away from the trail into this mist. They hiked along, and they found that they had to get down this steep, muddy ridge. They ended up just sliding down on their butts, holding onto their gear and their packs. And then they had to go and hike out through this forest of young koa trees. And then they had to negotiate this whole slope of uluhi, false staghorn ferns. Now these ferns, they can grow really tall. And they could hide drop-offs. And a broken frond was so sharp, could easily slice through skin. They called it the Uluhi Hill of Death. Well, after they got down off that hill, they found a pool, freshwater pool in a stream, where they could wash off the mud from the trail. And after swimming and cleaning up, some guys noticed there was a strong current in this pool. It's almost as if something was trying to pull them back into the pool. And Mrs. Omaku looked at them and told them that in this valley, there are mo'o wahine, legendary Hawaiian women lizards that live in those pools. And they would love to have a nice, young, handsome Hawaiian man to keep them company for a lifetime or two. Well, they headed off down that water course, trying to get out of the valley. And they came across this really strange thing. They saw this huge koa tree. And all these tea leaves planted around it. It kind of looked like the tea leaves were kind of protecting the koa tree. And the more they looked at it, looked like maybe there might have been a grave underneath that koa tree, and surrounded by these protective tea leaf plants. That was weird. And then they looked at the tea leaf plants. They were all young tea leaf plants, and they said, oh, that's really weird. And then they looked around the area, and they noticed the whole area had been cleared out, like someone was taking care of this thing out here in the middle of nowhere. That was super weird. They had enough. They just wanted to get out of there and go home. I mean, it took them 2 hours to get off the mountain and 6 hours to climb out of that valley. They said they were so exhausted they thought maybe delirium was creeping in. They felt that maybe time had slowed down and that something was trying to hold them in that valley as long as possible. They began to have to negotiate through this mangrove tangle. It was like doing push-ups with a 40-pound pack on your back. And after that, they had to hike up this really steep hill through this forest of ironwood trees. Oh, they were so happy when they got out of that valley. Oh, they got off the mountain. They were so happy. They decided to just go home and sleep in their own beds. Well, most of them did. One of the brothers couldn't sleep. He woke up in the middle of the night and got out of bed, and he looked out through the window. He looked up at the stars and the moon. It was the night of Pokane, the night of the god Kane. And staring up at that moon and the stars, suddenly all the images of the dream that he had the night before on the mountains came flooding back to him like that cell phone that's ringing. They were in the meadow, and it was dark. It was foggy, and someone was screaming, "Where are you? No, no, no!" And he saw the faces of his friends come flying at him and disappear. And all the while, someone was screaming. And his brother was standing next to him, and when he turned to look at his brother, that's when he woke up. And he knew that something was wrong, and they were all in big trouble. Other strange things began happening. Remember the guy who had problems coming down off the mountain? He said a couple nights after they got off the mountain, he woke up on his living room floor, and he couldn't move. He was being pressed. This wasn't sleep paralysis. He didn't see any zip ring opening up a door on top of his ceiling or nothing. But something was pressing down upon him, hundreds of pounds of force, holding him immobile and terrorized. He thought he could make out what was on top of him, and then it vanished. But that presence and the pressure never released. And for what seemed like hours, finally, that presence and the pressure lifted, and he could move again. Another guy had some tea leaves under a big rock in the bed of his crew cab pickup. And he was driving down the freeway, you know. He got all the windows open. Even the back window of the crew cab was open, driving down the freeway. And he looked in the rearview mirror, and he saw one of the tea leaves bouncing up and down in the bed of his pickup. He's flying down the freeway, 60 miles an hour, and this tea leaf is bouncing up and down. And it begins floating toward the cab. Against the wind, it begins floating toward the cab of his pickup. He's looking at his rearview mirror. He sees it come in through that open back window. It rises up, and he's staring at it. And it taps him on the back of the head like a cosmic dope slap. And then it falls down on the back seat of his truck. That was his wake-up call. He knew. He began praying for forgiveness for whatever he did wrong. He thought that maybe he had brought something back from the mountain. And that's when he called Mrs. Umaku. He told her everything that had happened up on the mountain and that what had happened after they got back. And Mrs. Umaku told him, oh, you got to tell all the boys. You got to bless all the gear that they took up. Everything they took up on the mountain has to be blessed. She told him what to do. And he sent out that instruction to everybody who went on the hike. And then Mrs. Umaku made an arrangement to go and meet with all the boys. It was a bright, sunny day. And she drove up. And as soon as she drove up, all these low clouds came flying in. And it began to rain. The guy who was pressed, he saw the clouds coming in. And he felt that same presence that he felt when he was being pressed. And that pressure, he felt all that pressure descend upon everybody. And when Mrs. Umaku finished her blessing, the rain stopped. The clouds dissipated. And that pressure lifted. Mrs. Umaku told the boys that the energy they were feeling was coming from Kama'apua, big God. Said the valley that they were hiking through, that was his valley, and he wanted them to know that. And Mrs. Umaku looked around at the boys and said, hey, which one of you two have Ali'i blood? Have blood of chiefs? The two brothers looked at each other. No one told her anything. She just knew. And that was an awakening for all these boys who just realized, oh, they got interested in more, like finding out their heritage and who they were and about the area where they were hiking. I mean, to them, this whole adventure up in the mountain was a big test, as if they went up there and whatever was up there said, oh, you guys, let come. Okay, tell you what, I'm going to give you a test. See how you guys handle it. All their amaku, all their relatives, ancestors, they were happy that they were there. They're telling them, oh, boys, don't be afraid. It's okay. Just be careful. Just show respect. And now these boys, growing up, they never paid attention to any of the stories, any of the legends they heard growing up. And now they said, oh, we got to show respect. And now whenever they go up in the mountains, they always go up with good intention. Whenever they see a place that's been cleared out, they always pray, they ask for permission to be there. And when they come off the mountains, they always give thanks. They always give mahalos. And for the rest of us, you may not be from the islands, you may not be a Hawaiian, but you're going to be okay. Going to be okay. You can go anywhere in the islands as long as you make sure that you conduct yourself like a respectful guest. This story has a very interesting little coda. Remember when I told you the boys were saying it took forever to get out of that valley? It said, they kept telling it took forever to get out of that valley, and it took hours. On the recording, on that digital recording, it captured an EVP, an electronic voice phenomenon. At that point in the interview, you can hear the boys saying, oh, it took us forever to get out of that valley. Another guy chimes in, yeah, forever. And another voice comes in and says, forever. It was stretched out, soft, but almost as if whoever said it was right next to the microphone. Mrs. Umaku said the voice didn't belong to any of the boys who were there. And when she played it back to them, they were all spooked. She believes that voice was Kama'apua. And he was telling them, I'm still here. I'm alive. And when you boys come back up in the mountains, you better show respect. And don't bring any pork onto my mountain.
Thank you very much, Alton. That was absolutely wonderful. This is, Alton's been doing this for each of our 3 years that we have done this. None of you live on top of a mountain, do you? Oh, okay, that's good. Last but not least, in our afternoon storytelling, we tried to do it in the daytime so that each of you would go home without having to worry about doors or pork or anything. Nobody's from the Kaneohe side, are they? Uh-oh, okay, sorry. You're on your own. Last but not least is a wonderful storyteller who has been working with us for quite a long time, and too long? Not over yet. Here he is, Jeff Gere.
Jeff Gere brought his own lighting system. Bear with us. Since Tim left me to speak to you, last night I did a show and my wife created that, which reminded me of the time I was a 4th grade teacher. And I was in Wahiawa at Our Lady of Sorrows school. You say, uh-huh. A question, why would you name a school Our Lady of Sorrows? And why would you send your kid there? But it was, and I did, and we were. I was a 4th grade teacher, and I was supposed to get the pumpkins for the pumpkin carving contest, as 4th grade teachers are known to do. But I'd forgotten. So I'm driving through Wahiawa, and I'm like, oh no, I gotta get the pumpkins. So I went to Foodland, and there were no pumpkins left except the ones that nobody else wanted to buy. The junk ones, the twisted ones, the misshaped ones, the green ones. That was all there was to buy. So I bought a dozen of those, and I took them to the class, and the class was like, those are the junk ones. You bought the ugly ones. I'm like, no, those are the ones with personality. I had to look all over the place to find those weird ones. These are the ones. Pull the personality out of them. Come on, we're going to win this contest. Really? Yeah, come on. It's the odd things that make it fun. Oh. Of course, we won the contest. That's a short little pumpkin story. A hand for the storyteller, please. Well, Mr. Jeff has a tale for you. This is a real story because it really happened because I was in it, and I am in it, and I'm still in it, and I'm telling it to you. Whether you know it or not, once upon a time, Mr. Jeff, your handsome storyteller, was telling stories at the Talk Story Festival. I ran the biggest storytelling event in the state. You say, okay. Talk Story Festival, big deal. You say, wow. But afterwards, I would go on the Neighbor Island tour so that all the Neighbor Island tourists could see the storytellers, and everybody says, wow. You say, wow. Yeah, it was a big deal. And when I worked out these tours of the Neighbor Islands, I like to work. Storytellers have to work. You don't just get to ride along in a van and do a few little shows like this one. No, we do 5 in a day. We're doing like cranking. But it just so happened, Alton was on some of those tours. This particular Saturday in which this story unfolded, I was on this tour, and we happened to be free. We were in Makawao, upcountry Maui, right? And so we were driving to Pukalani, nothing to do, just the morning, a beautiful morning. Sun was shining, birds were singing. Now, there was 3 storytellers in the back. One was named Sandra McLeese from the Big Island. My co-pilot was Makia Malo. Leprosy, Hansen's disease, full-on Hawaiian. Makapo, can't see, always wears sunglasses because he was actually missing an eye. Caved-in nose, fingers all stumpy, quite a sign. 300 pounds of Hawaiian. And he was not a dancer. He was unsteady on his feet. He was missing some toes from the disease. He was all messed up. The biggest heart, so funny. He would transform a room in a couple of minutes with funny stories. Amazing guy. But he was my co-pilot. He couldn't see. And that you may have had this phenomena. You're driving down the road and suddenly there's that handwritten sign. garage sale. What could be better than that? A garage sale. We pull over to the side of the road. I open the back doors. They're out, the other storytellers in the back, and I go around the back. We bring down those lights now. And we go into the house. Now, there's a yard, there's a garage with an arrow going like, this is where the garage sale is, kind of thing. The others are ahead of us. I hear as I walk up with Makia, Stumpy Makia, I'm like, come on, I don't want him to trip or something. And we're going over and he says, I hear a voice go, there's more up here. You don't have to stay down there and be a stranger. Whatever. Makia's like, what is there? I'm like, I see a couple of beat up t-shirts and an Aloha shirt that's torn, and there's dog poop in the corner and spilled cat litter, it's just a mess. I'm like, ugh. Come on up. The rest are already up there. Oh, you're storytellers. What a strange thing. Oh, I got to get Makia up the stairs. Boom, 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 boom. We pull in to up top of the stairs to the right into the kitchen, right? It's like there's one table with a little L-shaped sitting area. You get it, okay? And the kitchen, and we're all kind of milling around. There's really nothing to do, and I take just a quick glance. Well, I got some stories from my life. Quick impression. Too many cigarettes for too many nights in too many bars with too many drinks. The lady, her life has just been sucked. And she's going on this cigarette like it's a food group. Well, I got plenty of stories. And for a minute, I actually look at her. And that's when my blood starts to turn to ice, and I get that feeling all over like, oh, no, 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 no. I know her. And I remember how I know her. I grew up with kids in Haleiwa for a couple of decades. And for part of that time, my younger daughter was fascinated by whales. Everything was whaling, the paintings, whales, everything. Whale. We want to know whales, term papers. And in Hauula, going towards Laie, there were those old stores that got painted up and hoping some tourists would pull in and buy a t-shirt, right? It had a whale on the side. Dad, we're driving. Look, there's a whale. Let's pull in. Maybe we'll learn something. Okay. And she was the shopkeeper. She told us a story about living in Baja California in a place called Paradise with a bridge that was painted like a rainbow. And every night the SUVs, black sedan cars, would go up to the big house that nobody went to on the top of the mountain. How they could hear the cries of people being tortured. Drug money, blood, fire, pain, suffering. My daughter and I left that house and got in our car, and we both looked at each other and wept. That's her. That's the lady. And I'm like, oh, I think we really got to go, you guys. Come on, I just remembered we got another show. We got to get going. One standard place. No, I'd like to hear it. Sit on there. I think I've got a story. And you know how when you're body surfing and you're too far back on the wave and the wave is pulling you over and you're going, no, 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 no. Well, I've done some things I'm not too proud of. And every now and then, one thing and another thing, and I get swollen by the memories of the things that I can't change anymore. Like a big, deep hole, black pit I can't get out of. Oh, I was in it deep. I was living in a trailer in New Orleans. I couldn't get out. I was just swimming in that dark cesspool of my past, and I knew it had come to an end. I had to confront this. So I said, God above, how can I know that you love me? I know you're a God of love, but I need to know it. For all the things I've done in my life, I need to know it tonight. I told you, I was in a deep place. I'm not proud of it. So I threw on my slippers and I went outside. I was just in my natty like that. And I walked down from the trailer park. I walked down up the chain link fence right onto the freeway. Yeah! 16-wheelers. But God was with me, and I said, this is the night. You got to show it to me. You got to show me your love. I'm putting my whole life out. This is it. This is the moment. Came to the turn in the road. There were 3 men, then maybe 3 or 4. They're like, hey, baby, hey, what you doing? You're walking out here. Why don't you come down here? I know I shouldn't have gone. I told you. I threw myself into it. I needed God to show me his love right then. So I was open to it. I just said I shouldn't go, but I'm going to go. I'll go. Sure, I'll go down here. Walk down the pathway. There was a fire. There was a fire down there. And I sat down on the other side of the fire because there was something on the other side. I don't know if it was a man or a woman. I couldn't tell. It was an it. It was this thing. It was a shape. It was human. And there was some kind of play going on with the light. Because as the thing looked across at me, in the firelight, the eyes were red. Now, I don't know how the mind knows these things, but in my mind, I knew I'm looking into the eyes of a killer. I said, well, I'm a killer. Yeah, I eat meat. I eat meat to live. I kill to live. And then it spoke. I kill. But I kill for fun. Okay, here's how it's going to go, Joe. You want to know if your God loves you? Well, this is your night. I'm going to give you 3 chances. And if you just do one right, you name one of the sounds. I'll give you 3 sounds. If you can name one of them, I'll let you go. You'll be free. You'll know God loves you. You'll live your life, everything happy. Happy, happy, happy. But if you don't guess them, and I don't think you will, then you're mine. And I'm going to give you to the boys. And the boys are hungry. So listen up, girl. Your life's in the balance. Listen good. Close your eyes. Tell me what you hear. Maybe. And I closed my eyes. I said, God above, be with me now. Shut up! Listen. It's water. Water swirling. Somebody's rowing something. Yeah, but who? What are they doing? What's the river? What's the river? I don't know the river. How can I tell who's doing what in the river? There's something moving. Yeah, it's an oar. It's a rowing thing. Who? What's rowing? You don't know nothing. You don't. I told you couldn't get it. God, I know this game. I love the game. No, you don't know who that is. Oh, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. It's the river Styx. You know. Everybody knows that the Greeks, the Romans, Egyptians, it takes the people who are on the living side, roam across the river to the dead. You know why they put those coins on their eyes? To pay the man to take them across the river to the other side. But you didn't get that, did you? You got 2 more chances, dear. Pray to your God that you get one right. Here we go. Close your eyes now. Close them good. That's Jesus, Lord, Mary, Mom, give me the strength, speak to me. And I didn't hear a voice. I listened, and this is what I heard. It's something tearing. Something's meat eating or something like, what meat? What meat? Who's doing what? I don't know who could be doing what. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know. You don't you? You don't know. You don't know, and I told you you wouldn't know. Oh, I'll tell you, dear. Suspense is killing me. I love this game. You know what they do in cultures when the dead have left the body? They put the body in the field. First come the crow, then come the wild dogs, the vermin, the buzzards. Start on the soft tissue. Finally, they're reaching in the asshole, pulling out the intestines, chewing them out to get the soft tissue. Yeah. That's what you heard. But you didn't know that, did you? Where's your God now, honey? One more chance. Listen good. And I did pray to my God that he would hear my plea. Shut up and listen for your life, girl. God sent a lightning bolt into my eyes, into my mind. I knew what to say. I said, that is the sound of the last breath of life. In the last moment of breath, that is the dying breath of a dying soul. But it's not my soul, and it's not my breath. Because I breathe out, but I breathe in again. And as much as I breathe in, I know there is an afterlife. Whatever the downside is, the upside comes. I breathe out and I breathe in. And as I breathe out with my sins, I breathe in with his grace. I am saved. I have new life. I live on. Get away from me. You have no power over me. My kingdom, my Lord, is the kingdom and the power and the glory of everything and everywhere forever and ever. Get away from me. I walk in his glory and in his love. I'm shamed this fight. Get away from me. You are not my Lord. I am leaving you now. And I walked up, I stood up, I turned around, I walked up that path. Let him alone, leave me alone, let her go, let her go. And I went to the... I walked back to that house. I walked in that fence. I walked back to my trailer. I walked into my bed. I pulled the covers around in my bed, in my trailer, and I started to cry. I cried all night. Being shamed and thankful. There is a God and he loves me. And he forgives sinners like me with his love. I know it's true. I know it's true. I know it's true. We gotta go now. We got back in the car. I don't remember anybody in that group saying anything about what we just experienced. A couple years later, I said to Sandra McLeese, I was thinking about that strange garage sale we went to that time. Do you remember that? She said, do I remember it? I wish I could remember it better. It's a great story. I'd like to tell it. And I went, huh. And I forgot about it for 20 years. Until during COVID, on Zoom, at the end of a festival, there was an open mic, and somebody was telling a story, and it just came right back in the back of my head and slammed it into my mouth. And I said, I've got a story, and I told it on Zoom. And the story that I told that night, which I remembered after 20 years, I just told to you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. If we can have all the tellers come back up. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Big round of applause for Jeff Gere, Alton Chung, and Janine Oshiro. If you have the link, you can watch this again at midnight on your YouTube, just in case you would like to be a little more scared. Thank you once again for coming out, and I want to thank our big crew that did a wonderful job in the back, Elena, Marilyn, M, and Margaret, who hide somewhere in a room making sure it shows up on YouTube for everybody. Thank you, everybody out there in virtual world, digital world, and hopefully we see you back sometime. Aloha.